Is Janice Towers the final Black Ops 6 Zombies DLC map, or is there a DLC 5 or even a DLC 6 on the horizon? I want to talk about a few different rumors floating around in the community today and talk about what I personally think. So first things first, as I'm sure you're aware, there's been a leak floating around in the community from the Ghost of Hope over on Twitter for a while now, and it's something that I broke down and discussed in a prior video, but obviously, like with all leaks and rumors, we need to take it with a massive grain of salt. And even the Ghost of Hope recently falsely reported that Shattered Vale was similar in size to Liberty Falls and the Tomb, when it actually proved to be a pretty big map, even bigger than Citadel Daymore. I'm sure the Ghost of Hope does have genuine sources, because obviously he's reported on many correct things over the past year particularly. However, that doesn't mean he can't be fed misinformation or stuff that is misinterpreted. And since then, there's been this other leak about a DLC 6. Now, the first one is from Magua, and obviously this is just a joke. However, I've seen people making videos about it and lots of people in the comments taking it seriously. He is obviously just joking. A quick scroll through his account shows he's joking all of the time. People on Twitter take things so extremely seriously. His main news account is where news is. His main account is just mainly for joking. So let's just push that aside for a moment. And then there's been this other leak from Semtex Leaks saying that there will be a DLC 5 and 6 again. However, he went on to say that this is just a prediction, a guess. It's not a leak at all. And basically, he was just making that assumption after completing the Janice Towers Easter egg and assuming that by the fact that we are on DLC 3 already by Season 3, that surely there has to be more maps to come. And here's where I want to get into my own personal opinion. I do think Janice Towers is the final DLC 4 map. I've seen, especially on Twitter, there's been lots of back and forth between the community about whether it's going to be the final map or not. And I think in a regular year where we didn't know that Black Ops 7 was on the horizon, us having 3 maps by now so early on would be a huge indicator that we are going to be getting more maps, potentially even 1 per season. However, the fact that we know that Treyarch are making Black Ops 7 and they are having to pump out another Zombies release just a few months down the line, I just struggle to foresee how Treyarch could have possibly made so many Zombies maps. And yes, the counter argument to that is that Black Ops 6 has been getting developed for 4 years, but we know it's not been a true 4-year dev cycle, unfortunately, like we thought it was going to be. The first 2 years apparently were them just sort of getting the Treyarch systems, particularly for Zombies, working on the new engine, so that wasn't really time they were able to properly develop that stuff. However, I do think because they have had so long, longer than usual, even despite the hiccups in switching to the new engine, I think that is why we are getting Zombies maps releasing so consistently, because I do think that is because most of them were pretty much wrapped up before release and have been concepted for a long time. I mean, developers said on Twitter before the game released that it was getting play tested for the past year, so I'm sure most of these maps have been more or less wrapped up. They've still, of course, been developing them in the post-launch, but I think they had the general layouts and most things pretty much ready to go. They just needed to put all of the finishing touches. But I just don't think there's going to be a map after Janice Towers. I know I spoke about before, if there is going to be a DLC 5, I do think that the most likely case is that Janice Towers is going to essentially still be the finale map, and then we could have a DLC 5 that is some sort of epilogue chapter set a few years later, tying in with the stuff with 1996, from 1993 to 1996, where Eva Jansen has to be born and then the characters die, to tie in with Modern Warfare Zombies. But now, the longer I've thought about it, I think that there isn't enough room to wrap up all of those loose ends, and I feel like that stuff might still be saved for Black Ops 7, because you have to bear in mind, we do not know when Black Ops 7 is going to be set. Now, my best guess right now is it's either going to be in the Dark Ether itself, or potentially even in liminal spaces, and that's going to be how the original characters return, as essentially being their souls, their essence, stuck in a time loop from the past, with the Shadowsmiths trying to harvest them and catapult the multiverse back into existence. That way, the storyline doesn't really have to be set in any particular era, because yes, the leaks are saying that Black Ops 7 is going to be a Black Ops 2 sequel in 2035, but that doesn't mean Zombies has to be. Yes, since Modern Warfare 2019 onwards, always the court modes have coincided with when the campaigns are set. They're trying to keep things in the general era. Yes, with Modern Warfare 3, of course, the Zombies mode is a prequel, but it's still set around about the same era, in around about modern day. I think they're going to change that with Black Ops 7 to, like I said, either in the Dark Ether ether or in a liminal space. I think that's going to be the big cliffhanger of Black Ops 7 when we finally probably activate the Sentinel artifact. And the reason why I think Janus Towers is going to be the final map is pretty clear. The ending cutscene for Shattered Vale is like the ending cutscene of a season for a show. You've got that epic cliffhanger where they're walking off into the distance with the Janus Towers melting down and exploding. It seems like the perfect setup for a finale map, and even the intel teases that the end is here in Liberty Falls.
Whoever may find this, I want to let it be known that this community summoned this wrath upon itself. This church was a hollow vessel. Our prayers dwindle into a quiet whisper. Children running rampant with no humility or respect. Their satanic music playing incessantly. All of them sat in front of their television sets, worshiping that false prophet, blocking out the divine life. Those towers were built to test our faith, and we had none to hold back the evil within them. Janus people filled my church, drank my wine, asked for forgiveness. I was overjoyed. My pride blinded me from seeing their true design. Liberty Falls was chosen to be the genesis of the end. I gaze upon this rapture with calm and serenity as I await the warm embrace of paradise.
I think that is because, like I said, there's going to be some sort of catastrophic event when the Sentinel artifact is indeed activated. Sam wants it to reconstitute Samantha Max's body, Richtofen wants it to bring his family back. Whatever the case is, we know Panos is probably working with the Shadowsmiths or otherwise, and eventually all hell is probably going to break loose for Liberty Falls. It's the beginning of the apocalypse, and this could be the central point where everyone and everything is plunged into the Dark Ether, then explaining why Requiem are exposed to the Dark Ether so much so that they have to sacrifice their lives that we see in Modern Warfare Zombies, because they were basically walking Dark Ether time bombs. And that's why the canisters that take that essence out of them are essentially ether bombs, allowing outbreaks to happen with a mere drop. They were too dangerous for not just themselves, but the world as well. And their sacrifice might have been the only way. But like I said before, we don't actually know if that is going to be at the end of this game, or if it's going to be with Black Ops 7. If there is just Janus Towers left, I can't foresee how that's going to fit in, so we really could see the original characters and Requiem in Black Ops 7. Either as an 8-player crew, or you can just choose from either 4 sets, similar to how you could choose from the Ultimate Supremacist characters and Alpha Omega. I don't know how that would affect the Easter egg and storyline and narrative though, and dialogue, but yeah, I just don't see another map after Janus Towers unless it is some sort of epilogue. But to me, I think Treyarch are probably too hard at work on COD 2025 to be thinking about another map. I think in a regular year, we would definitely probably be getting a map per season, and you have to say, well, why would Treyarch pump out a map every single season at the start to make us think that more maps are coming, if this does end up being true? And I think the obvious answer is, they are doing it intentionally to bait us, and to keep engagement high. For example, with the Tomb being a smaller map, I think that's completely fine in a scenario where we're getting more than 4 usual DLC maps, because it makes it seem like we would be getting more maps having 1 per season. And I think it's totally fine having some smaller, more survival, more classic oriented maps. The Tomb really feels like a Black Ops 1 map to me, and I don't think it's a bad map by any means, but it doesn't meet the usual scale and standard of a regular DLC map, and I think a lot of people have excused that because they think more maps are down the line. And I think that's a big reason why they're releasing maps so quickly, is so that we do think that more is to come. Some people, I think, gave more leniency towards the Tomb because they think the DLCs are going to alternate between a larger map and then a smaller, less complex map. But we already know that formula doesn't seem to be true, considering the fact that from what we've seen of Janus Towers, it looks like a huge experience, and Shattered Vale likewise has been a pretty big map. This seems to suggest that that is not the formula they are going with, and the Tomb was just a one-off, because Liberty Falls as a smaller map receives such great reception on launch and has the highest player count for grinding camos, XP, etc, just a casual fun time. And I think that really works well for a launch map, but it doesn't translate as well for a DLC map, where I think the expectation is higher, and in a scenario where that is happening, again, I think it needs to be mitigated by having more maps to substitute, so you have a good mix of both types of experiences. And I think it is also a good measure for their analytics, because they can see how much releasing a map every single season is benefiting their microtransaction sales, their player engagement, so they can determine for the future if it's worth doing a zombies map every single season and if it's worth putting all of those resources in. Now, we've had leaked maps for Black Ops 7 already, which is absolutely wild, and it does seem like we're probably just going to be getting the 4 standard DLCs once again. Of course, that could change. We're still a while out. Maybe that could even change based on whatever the analytics they have for Black Ops 6, although I don't think that's going to be possible because, like I said, they're making 2 games, fully fledged games at once. It's just too much work, and I think that's the biggest reason against a DLC 5. And it is a shame, because even if their data is suggesting this, I think the constraints they are under by making 2 games at once is going to limit any potential, even if they want to have a map per season, of being able to pull that off for Black Ops 7. So to be honest, it may not even be something we see implemented until years and years down the line, even after Black Ops 7, whatever zombies experience they're working on next, and God knows when that's going to be. And that's really the problem with the Call of Duty cycle. Their data that they get, because they are on such tight crunches, may not even be able to be fully executed until years and years down the line. Especially now that DLC's free, they're only making money from microtransactions, and it has been recently leaked that Black Ops 6 is selling more microtransactions than ever before, but we don't know if that's coming directly from zombies, or it's just from all of the modes, or it's mainly from other modes and not zombies, because obviously they reduced the gobblegum cooldown time tremendously to now just 10 seconds from 5 minutes before, so you can just spam gobblegums, and that's obviously been done, and that to me would suggest that zombies is not making enough money from microtransactions, and that could be why budgeting might not be high enough for having more maps down the line, and why we've been seeing so much reused content despite the long dev cycle. The Black Ops 6 Zombies team might not even be that large. I mean, there was only one developer coding the Z-Rex boss fight, which obviously I don't know anything about the behind the scenes of development, but surely that just seems way too low if they do have a fully fledged team like they usually did back, you know, during Black Ops 3 and 4. To me, it feels like the Zombies team has scaled down a lot since Black Ops Cold War onwards, and there could be more evidence why. But I think the biggest evidence why I don't think there's going to be a DLC 5, and why I think Treyarch have been pumping out maps so quickly, is because Black Ops 7 is on the horizon, but not just because they have to work on 2 games at once, but also because we know it's been spoiled that the original characters are going to be returning. And if I'm right that there isn't a DLC 5, then that's surely going to happen next map on Janus Towers. And if so, Treyarch need to speedrun to the end of the storyline to get to the original characters returning, because otherwise how can they even start the marketing for Black Ops 7 Zombies, because that would completely defeat the point of the ending of Janus Towers and the cliffhanger and the shock value of it. Now, unfortunately, it's already been spoiled, so we know that's happening, but I'm sure there's many fans that are not actively online, so probably haven't heard of this news, but I do think it is a massive shame that it's been spoiled, because it would be so shocking and come at such a left field if it hadn't been leaked when it does actually happen. And when I see the ending cutscene, you know, I'm gonna smile, I'm gonna be excited, but I know it's coming, so it's gonna ruin a lot of that shock. I'm gonna be probably pretty straight-faced, and I think a lot of other people will be, because we know it's coming. And I think it's also changed our perception of the Black Ops 6 Zombie story, because it does make it feel a lot more pointless when we know the original characters are on the precipice of being back. It makes the story feel like it's a lot more filler. I mean, the storyline's not been that great, which I've already done a whole video delving into, and I think the perception of the game's completely changed because we know how it's going to end. We just don't know how it's going to get there. A lot of the focus on my storyline videos has been speculating about how they are going to return. We wouldn't be having these discussions at all if it wasn't leaked. There's indication about how they will return in the game, but we would have no idea that's about the original characters if it weren't for the leak. And it's just absolutely crazy to think that we could be on the precipice of seeing the original characters returning literally just one map away. It has come so quickly. Black Ops 6 really feels like a TikTok. It feels like we're just scrolling and every single map is just releasing all of a sudden, but they're not having as much weight as Zombies maps of old. I think Black Ops 6 will end up being a very forgettable release due to the way that the maps have been releasing so quickly and the storyline is not as engaging as Zombies experiences of old. I think we are really going to quickly forget about it, unfortunately, especially when we're jumping ships so soon to Black Ops 7, and then we're all going to be very engaged with that, and that might end up having a much better storyline, as the reports are saying it's going to be more story focused, which they need to do considering the original crew are back. And just on that precedent alone, they're probably putting more effort into that, and that could also explain why Black Ops 6's storyline feels underwhelming and underbaked, like it's not being fleshed out enough. It could be because they're writing 2 stories at once. They're having to make intel for both games, and that could definitely be a reason. Now, obviously, we're going to be getting Season 4 on the 28th/29th of May if there's no delays, so we are very, very quickly going to learn if the DLC 5 leak is in fact real or not, because once the roadmap is announced, if we find out there's no Janus Towers in the season, not just at the start, but not even in Reloaded, then I definitely do think that points to the fact that there is not a DLC 5, because that would mean Janus Towers will release in Season 5, and then the gap season will be Season 4, which I personally think is going to be the most likely release date for Janus Towers. I think it'll be in Season 5, because that'll be then more in line with when the Zombies marketing will probably really kick off for Black Ops 7 in a few months' time. So that map can release, the original characters can be revealed, and then they can really start the marketing properly. I'm sure we'll get a teaser probably for Black Ops 7 Zombies before then, when we get a full-on Black Ops 7 reveal, which will happen before the main Zombies one, and maybe we'll get a paragraph or something simple, but they're not going to reveal everything just yet. Now, if Janus Towers is revealed for Season 4, then I do think DLC 5 is on the horizon. That would definitely seem to suggest as such, unless when Janus Towers is actually released, regardless of it being in Season 4, if the original characters are revealed at the end, well, we know there's probably not going to be a DLC 5 unless it's somehow set between the two games. And the other evidence that might suggest there is not a DLC 5 is all of the Black Ops 6 Zombies DLC maps have been leaked from the Steam strings even before the game released, up until Janus Towers. All of the maps apart from that have released, and currently in the files right now there's not a single trace to suggest that there's another map after Janus Towers. Now obviously that does not necessarily mean that one cannot be added. For example, with Black Ops Cold War, when Mauer Totem released, there was not another map, the Forsaken, in the files. However, the case was different with Black Ops Cold War because not all of the maps were in the files from the launch of the game, and also the game has teased every single map that's come out so far within the intel and also the environments, and there's not been a teaser at all for any other map beyond then. If we look back on Black Ops 3, every single DLC map was simultaneously teased, not just with each of the coordinates leading us to each of the locations of the fractures, but also it was teased that we would go back to the house once we collected all of the characters' souls. Again though, if we look back on Black Ops Cold War, all of the DLC maps, apart from Forsaken, were teased at launch, as they were all coordinates on Weaver's computer screen in the D Machine intro. I do feel though this is a very different case because they've been a lot more overt than ever before in teasing the DLC maps for this game. All of them were referenced in the intel on launch apart from the tomb, all of them were leaked from before the game even released, and you could literally see all of the DLC maps on Liberty Falls in the distance at launch, as well as the tomb in the distance of the Avalon multiplayer maps, and every single ending cutscene has teased the following map. It's been very in your face. And the thing is, if there is a DLC 5, I don't even know where we would go from Liberty Falls. There's not really any location we could probably go that makes sense. We're about to use the Sentinel artifact, which is supposed to be here activated in Janus Towers. That's why these facilities were even built. That's the entire purpose of them. Where do we go after that unless it's some sort of epilogue to tie into Urzikstan? But what would drag us away from there is very unclear right now. But if the DLC 5 leak from the Ghost of Hope is wrong, he has to have gotten it wrong somehow. Obviously, I don't think it's just completely made up out of thin air, so you have to think, if it isn't true, how did this maybe happen? Well, like I said, Black Ops 6 has had a long development cycle. It's been rocky, but because of that, and as we've seen from, for example, the behind the scenes of Black Ops 3 and 4's development cycles when Treyarch had 3 years, they often overestimated how much they would be able to pull off, and their ambitions and their innovations grew stronger and stronger and actually became too big for what they were able to do within the time frame. So it could be that for Black Ops 6 Zombies they plan to do way more, and most of it ended up getting cut. I've been making loads of videos going over all of the cut content for Black Ops 3 Zombies, and more gets cut than ends up making it into these releases, and I think Black Ops 6 might be a much greater example of that just because of that extra dev time. That extra dev time does not mean more's going to get done, it just means that their ideas grow and grow and grow in scope, and sometimes it's often too hard for them to even reel it back in. And that's why I think actually a game like Black Ops Cold War, whilst it had a very short development cycle, only about a year and a half, because Treyarch took over the development mid Black Ops 4's life cycle when Sledgehammer and Raven were previously directing it, but they had some sort of falling out. I think that game actually came out really, really good because they kept everything simple. They kept the zombies really simple. They stripped it back from the overcomplicatedness that we were seeing in Black Ops 3 and 4, and they went back to basics. They went back to basics with having a straightforward linear campaign with lots of nostalgia, and it felt very reminiscent of the original Black Ops as well, with the mind warping overarching storyline, and I felt like the campaign was so solid, in contrast to Black Ops 4's campaign getting cancelled because they had too long of a dev cycle and the ideas they had just became too big. And again with Black Ops 3's campaign, they had too long of a dev cycle and they wanted to do an open world campaign that was too ambitious, and most of that ended up getting cut and they had to rework the campaign in the last 8 months before release, which Jason Blundell actually recently talked about in an interview.
Attempts done. There was a quest to look for a different shape of campaign that did not pan out. There was something exciting about what we were kind of going after, and often is the case, by the way. You have an idea, but Call of Duty, we hit our date on time every time. I said that as in the past tense, but we used to on time every time. We never miss, right? And so when you're asking to kind of explore something or do something different, there's a time box, and it's like there's a zero barrier. And if you've not found it by that point, it's because you're going to be on time every time. Campaign is such a big thing. A campaign is a black hole of resources and time, right? What I actually ended up doing was I was like, okay, campaign team, start making zombies while we work out what we're going to make for the campaign. So the interesting thing about Black Ops 3 is the reason why we had such a robust zombie offering is the campaign was screwed, and I needed 2 months to write the story with Craig or sit down and go, well, what are we going to do? So hey, you 200-man team, start making zombie maps while we try and work out what the hell we're going to make.
And the multiplayer I think came out pretty solid as well. So I think Black Ops Cold War was actually helped by having a short dev cycle because they had to be quick and they had to be precise. There was no time for floundering and messing about. They had to be hyper focused and a lot stricter to their deadlines. And that is the pros and cons of weighing up the dev cycle, because more dev time does not necessarily always mean a better product, because Activision are never going to delay a product. Yes, if Treyarch had infinite time to work with their ideas, maybe they could make a better thing, but the thing is they're always going to have a strict deadline, and that deadline's always going to come. So if their ambitions start getting too big for what the deadline is, they're screwed. And we've seen that happen so many times with Treyarch. If Activision would give them an extra year or two to actually fully flesh out whatever they had planned, then maybe it could work. But Activision are never ever going to do that, because that would completely ruin the Call of Duty formula that's based on an annual release and the Call of Duty cycle. Even if people are not happy with the current game, they start marketing the next one, and it's also based on seasons, so it would completely mess up the flow of all of that. But maybe sometime earlier in Black Ops 6's life cycle, they did have more maps planned, and maybe even they wanted to do one per season, and maybe the Ghost of Hope is seeing some outdated information about that. I know there's been lots of speculation that Liberty Falls might have been some sort of outbreak map, and maybe even the area of Shattered Vale and Janus Towers could have been points of interest with the town itself as well, because there are roads connecting all of them, and it does seem like it would make for a good outbreak experience having it all, and that could very well be true, or maybe that's something we're going to see in a DLC 5 if it is in fact true. But I could definitely see that being a case that's something that's cancelled, considering the intel talked about a wall being built around like the incursion zone, and that's something we see absent on the map. And the fact that all of the maps are set so close to each other, again, I think this is further evidence it could have been once upon a time part of one big experience that might have released as separate survival maps as well, similar to Transit, because we've never had maps set just down the street from each other back to back to back like this in Zombies ever before. So yeah, let me know what you think of all of this. I do think Janus Towers will be the final map, and I think the main reason is that Treyarch have too much to work on right now. Making 2 Zombies games back to back is the main reason, and I know Treyarch will get a lot of shit in response to that, because if that is true, they will feel baited that Treyarch were making us think there were more maps on the horizon by releasing one every single season until now. But again, I think they were stuck in a sticky situation where they have to rush out the maps because they need to get to Black Ops 7, but they couldn't just announce there's going to only be 4 maps either, because that would ruin their marketing and hype and buzz for the game at the same time. So they couldn't be honest about that, especially when we did get a smaller map like the Tomb. But anyways, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Do you think there is going to be a DLC 5 or don't you? And let me know why. If you do think there's going to be one, what do you think the map will actually be? Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already for latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.